All right, we are back with another episode of I Needed This Today. Thanks for tuning in with us. We've had a really fantastic first, what have we got? 9 episodes out so far. I think this is episode
Yes,
10
this is going to be
now.
episode 10. You get it
It's a
on
very
Podbean. You
special.
get a little award on the platform that I use. They give you an award for doing
We should
10
have those
episodes.
loyalty cards where, like, when you listen to all 10 episodes, you get like a free something. But
Oh,
we'll figure
yeah,
that out.
true. True.
So we're back here and we have a very special guest today. We have with us Phoenix, who has agreed to come on board and chat a little bit. Well, not a little bit, actually, to go to the uncomfortable and vulnerable places.
Mm.
And really, this is a complimentary episode because I released X Demons, the single, and we spoke about that on our last podcast episode. It's released now, and part of exploring the themes in that single, we wanted to invite some of our ex demons. And Phoenix is the first demon.
First demon that's been summoned.
We have summoned you today for this
Why have
little
you brought me
exorcism.
Uh,
So, for those of you who have been listening to our episodes, you would already know who Phoenix is. We spoke a little bit about Phoenix, peppered in, I think maybe episode 2.
two, yeah.
But we're going to go deeper today because Phoenix is a really important person in Paisley's life and in my life, and is a poet, is an embodiment practitioner. I think, would you do orgasmic alming? So, did I make that? Make that
Yeah,
up?
that was I do a bit of that, although I haven't like actively practiced in a while.
Cool.
But
Well,
it's definitely in there.
I'm gonna throw to you to introduce yourself,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then we can just go off from there.
Mm.
Yeah. Hello. That was hearing that I was a very special person in both of your lives. Like, even though I kind of knew that, it felt good to hear it. You're both very special in my life as well.
Hmm.
To introduce myself, yeah, I'm Phoenix Raig. Yeah, embodiment practitioner, constant seeker of going deeper, general existentialist. Yeah, a bit of an own practitioner, poet, as Alpha Mama said. I write under Bent Light Writing, and I do a bunch of children's books and short stories and novels and all sorts of genres. I'm all over the place. And
That's what we like. That's what we
Yeah.
like.
Extremely prolific.
Mm.
There you go.
Mm.
There you have it.
ah,
But when we met you, we actually, Paisley and I met you on the same night.
yeah,
Met you on the
And
same night. Yes.
it was the same night. And I remember this because it was my show of the Oil and Water Tour in Sydney.
Mhm.
And you came down with a few mutual friends. And I want to throw to you both to talk about this because your first meeting, or like your first, like when you collided in
Mm.
time and space,
Mm.
it was very impactful, shall we say?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go first. So, yeah, I have been on tour with Alpha Mama. We're dating at that time. And I'm sort of, as the manager, tour manager, the every hat manager, I'm sort of working the room as we're getting started. And I go over to the door to check what's happening. And a friend of ours is at the door, and I'm having a chat with her. And in comes this man, and I'm just, hugging everyone as they come in, because obviously they're here for a reason. So I want to give that love. I want to bring the beautiful energy immediately. I was like, say hello to this man. I just give a hug, and we nestled in actually, like, quite beautifully at first. And I remember our friend was like, a friend, we're working on not name dropping as much, so I won't name drop,
okay.
is
I think it's okay to name drop unless we're talking
If
shit
it's-
about the person.
okay, maybe it's okay if we're not talking shit about him. But I'm just going to choose not to for now,
Okay.
is because it's not super important. But they are quite known to be very confident in their expression
Yeah.
of orgasmic energy and like the eroticism that they see in life. And as we're hugging, first of all, I'm like, oh, who's this man that's really comfortable with hugging quite closely to another man, and she like leans in a bit more. She's like, those two beards rubbing together is such a turn on. And I'm like, okay, like that just went very deep for someone I've just met, but I definitely feel like a warmth from this person that I've not felt from a male immediately before. And then sort of went off and did the rest of the evening. But then at the end of the night, I was like, that guy, I'll go say goodbye to him at the end, because I'm sort of, again, working the room, thanking everyone for coming, saying goodbye. And I come up to you and we have a bit of a chat. And I can't remember if it was before or after. We had a hug. It was, again, like quite nestled in. And for me as well, I remember at that time, both our cocks were like resting on one another, and that made me question so much, like, is this okay? Do I like make a joke out of it and move? Do I subtly move? Do I just lean into it? What do I do? But I remember either before or after, I was like, hey, it felt very weird for me, but I was like, can I get your number or like your Facebook or something? Because I feel like there's a connection there that needs to be explored. So that was sort of the meeting on that night of just like, who is this warm man that I've just met that I feel extremely drawn to at this exact moment?
Yeah. I had completely forgotten about Nikki's commentary on that, but as you were saying it, oh my gosh,
it wasn't me. It's fine.
About the commentary, let's call her Nikki. Like, that's it could be anyone. But I'd completely forgotten about her commentary, and then until you were saying that, and I remembered it perfectly. Like, it came right back. I'd completely forgotten about that part. But it was the same for me when I think back to that night. It is in two phases. Standing by the door, meeting Alpha, and then Paisley comes over and hugging everyone, and just it being a noticeable hug. Like, it felt heavy and a lot of, like, to me, it felt like there was a lot of gravity in it, like just firm contact and impact, stable, not where like you kind of have your center of gravity weirdly back. It was like in, and I felt like you could hang out there. And then I guess I didn't remember who came up to who, because in my mind I thought I came up to you afterwards. But phase two was just afterwards and talking around, and just remembering bringing up the hug again of just like, that was a very good hug. And then just we found each other on Facebook and like made a point of connecting again shortly after that, which later I ended up, or like after we did set up to see each other again, it felt very much how I would have set up like a date with someone. And like afterwards I kind of made myself laugh of like, like I've never done that with a guy before. It feels cool though. Like I'm like actively establishing a male relationship just as I would with a female relationship. And as someone who questions like, man, I have a lot of female relationships, but not a lot of male relationships. It was like, that's why I'm not actively creating male relationships. I'm creating female relationships. I'm not creating male relationships.
I think like I want to like stir up this a little bit.
Stir it up.
Lol. Faze is like, let's go. Well, because it's so easy when we're recalling past moments to kind of that we're not in the experience anymore, so it's like we forget how real and how important and how emotionally charged things were at the time. And I want to kind of like go back there if possible, because I remember Paisley was shook. Paisley was shook. I remember him coming home and being like, and it was my night, so about me. You know what I mean? And Paisley was like, fuck, like like he was telling me, there was this guy and we hugged and like was questioning everything. What does that mean? And our cocks were touching, and like, what does it mean? And all of these feelings just came out of nowhere. And it was a big thing because I'm just going to go into it, Paisley. I know we've talked about this shit anyway.
I'm fine about everything.
Yeah. So up until that point, you'd been sleeping with men more on a sexual level, but with absolutely no like emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
And you and
Mm-hmm.
I had the emotional connection, and
Yep.
your emotional connections were strong with women, but not with men. And this was
Yep.
like the first time where you were like shook emotionally, and it was like,
Yeah.
fuck, what the hell does this mean? And it was the beginning of a lot of dominoes, beginning to topple over. So I just want, either of you to go back to that moment and like talk about the significance of what that was like for you.
Yeah, although I wanted to get to that is like, and Phoenix sort of touched on it a bit of like the aftermath. So yeah, at that moment, because I was sort of still in work mode, it was like I was affected, but it was more like, okay, put that affected over here because it's like compartmentalizing. But then when I got home was when I was like reflecting on the night and just like that, yeah, we've just had a sellout show and we've just had an epic tour and everything is great. But there's this one moment that's really just struck me in this space of like, yeah, it was just one of those moments where just in 1 second, my whole life changed. And like, I didn't fully understand that at the moment, but there was that like, uh, sort of like I've not that I've been in one, but I'm just going to imagine as if like an earthquake has just happened nearby and be like, what was that? Like, I feel like the whole house just fucking shake, but I don't understand how, And then later on, it's like there was an earthquake just over here. That's what, with more time, I realized this, my world just split in different directions from that moment forward. And I was very confused on how to navigate that, especially when it came to when it was time to hang out. I remember being with you with Alpha and being like, before we're going to leave, I'm like, I don't understand if this is a date, if this is bros, like I don't know. And like I remember stalking Phoenix's Facebook, but you didn't have really much going on Facebook. I'm like, is he gay? Is he straight? Like what I have to suss out what the meter is here, because I felt very like scared, but also like I'm open to whatever's going to happen here. Like I'm open to friends, I'm open to exploring what else can be there. And like before I even had left the house, I was having a bit of a like new reality shifting right in front of my eyes. I don't know what to do. I remember even looking at Alpha beforehand, you're in my bed, and I'm like, do I pack a condom? Like, and I remember asking on top of that, at that time I had only been a top, I've only penetrated men. I was like, and even more on top of that is, am I packing it for me or am I packing it for him? This is a lot. I don't know how I feel about this. And it was scary. I was like, but I'm trying to stay open at the same time. And I'm questioning so many things I've never had to question before. Yes, that was very alive for me at that moment.
Yeah. And mine was a fully different experience in the sense, or like, and this is where we started to get into some of our more heavy conversations, or more, because it was like I had felt something profound when we met, and I was kind of like laughing about it, like, oh, I just like it was kind of moving without, it was very I don't know. At that time, I wasn't open to a male relationship that was romantically charged in that way. And in my mind, it was just like, oh, sick, male connection. I would love a male connection, especially one where I was wanting to cultivate more male intimacy. Like even before I met you, I was like doing some sharing circles and just like loved moments where I could just be like holding hands with a man and just like being close with a man and like cuddling with a man. Like that was very meaningful to me. So I was like, okay, cool. I think like we hugged really well. I think we're on the same page here. But then I also, even though I wasn't like in my mind, I was like, yeah, no, we're just hanging out. Like that's all this is. When we were in the back of your car, like at the beach, like just hanging out there, like undeniably, I was like, okay, like I feel slightly on edge because this isn't fully like bro energy. Like, I don't fully know what's going to happen. Like, and it was like, yeah. And I remember like kind of in my body just being like, don't make a move because this is really special. And I kind of want it to just be here. But it's just like, there was definitely like there was energy there that I didn't know I didn't have experience with. I didn't know fully how to navigate it. I didn't fully know what I even wanted there. Like, I never even considered it. So it was very like just sort of a force, something that was there that it was very just like, at that name, it was like a nameless enemy. Well, not enemy, I don't want to call it that, but like a nameless force. It was very nameless to me. And then later we went, because you were having these conversations with Alpha, and then I remember the first time I went to God Queen Palace, like there was it was like there was some, like I found out that there was tension between Alpha and I, who I'd like never really even spoken to. I'm like, how is this happening? What did I do? Like, I hung out. Like, oh no, like what's going on? At the same time, it was the weirdest thing, because I was like, what's going on? No, I know what's going on. No, I don't know what's going on. What's going on? Like, fully.
Yeah.
Still to an extent, I'm like, don't even really know.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, I guess, because with that tension, so, you know, I'm an extremely, like, I'm a Leo, all right? Like, let's just put it that way. I love to be the one, the most important one, everything. And Paisley comes home from this date and is like very visibly affected and is like, I don't know what that is, because if that was a woman, that would have been the best date of my life. I just had the best date of my life. But
same.
It wasn't a date
I'll
kind of thing.
That one. Yeah.
And so I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, for
real? you brought me into that. So I remember, like, so we go out on this, we meet up at, I don't know, like say 7 p.m.
You're a bit quiet, by the way, Paisley. Just turn up.
I am. That's a first for me.
Yeah.
And I pick you up around 7, and then we go out and we do all these things, and there's this like getting to know each other, but also this tension, like you are on a date with someone, like historically before that for me, with a woman, of like, are we into each other? Are they into me? Am I into them? You know, like,
do
we need to hold hands? Do we need to kiss to find out? Do I have to just ask 1,000,001 questions? And we're doing a lot of things. We're having a lot of epic moments. We go for, we fucking went for a midnight stroll along the beach. We
did it.
Climbed a tree. We wrestled.
We did a lot.
We did a lot of things, and I dropped you off around like, I don't know, like 2 in the morning. We didn't look at the time the whole time. Not either of us looked at our phones. I dropped you off, and we had this epic moment of hugging in the rain out the front of your house, and we hugged for like 5 minutes straight, and our breaths met each other. We're breathing at the same. I remember getting into my car, and I was like, this is just too much for me. Like, I remember not knowing what to do. Like, I literally, Alpha wasn't home that night. Like, you had went up to the Blue Mountains to hang out with someone, I think to also get space from this situation. And then I remember talking to you on the next day on the phone, Alpha, and I'm telling you what happened. And you asked me, like, if that was a woman, was that a date, and was that a good date? And I was like, oh, like, that just shattered my world. I'm like, if that was a woman, that's the best date I've ever been on. Like, and that was a lot for me to handle at that moment of like, I can't comprehend that at this current moment. That's a lot to take. I think after I got off the phone, I had a big cry about it. I had a big journal about like, oh fuck, this person's extremely special. Like, in just 2 days, I don't know what the fuck to do. I'm already scared of losing this person, and I don't even fucking know them. I don't even know what this is, but it's a lot, you know?
Yeah. And I think that was a big factor in you journeying this relationship, in that I remember you saying a few times like, I don't want to lose this person. Like it was, it was like the first time that you'd experienced that, like, you know, like that terror of like, one day I'm not going to have this person, and I never want to feel that. And that was a really big new thing.
Yeah, it was coming off the back of me having a special person in my life that was taken away from me, that two people that were very special to me. One of the special people said, "You're not allowed to see the special person anymore. I'm taking them away from you." So like, as soon as I met another special person, I was like, someone's going to take this person away. You know, that was very alive for me.
Yeah. That was, the first date was there. I'll just call it that. But like, it was ridiculous. Just in, like, that was a lot of like, I was experiencing a lot of things on a few different levels, just because I was used to interactions where, I think I spoke about this that night, about like, or maybe a different night, but like, you know, you set an appointment, like, all right, we're going to get dinner, or we're going to see a movie, or we're going to do a thing, and you go and you do the thing, and then afterwards you have a, well, see you later, like, I guess we part ways here now. But there were so many moments along that night where I was like, I should go, like I should leave. And then every time I checked in, I was like, no, I don't actually want to. It's like, crap, like, what does that mean? Like, where do I part? When does the night end? Like, it became this like very open, boundless place that was intimidating, in the sense that I didn't know where the end was. There was no clear end. So we did just keep moving and flowing and doing all these things. And then it was like, and then we had this really intense hug. And the night actually intimidated me to an extent. I left that night feeling like overwhelmed a little bit. Like, I needed to breathe. I needed space. I actually felt a little bit weighed down, because it was just like it was so much. But yeah, and that leads us in, like, that also goes into another thing where like my version of a lot, and my experience of the relationship was different from yours, Paisley. And that led me to a lot of difficult situations, because I had my own flavor of like, I don't want to lose you. This is an incredibly powerful and incredible relationship for me. But at the same time, like, I didn't like journal it in these ways, or I didn't feel like I was having these like, it felt like you were having, I'll phrase it this way, like, it felt like you were having these beautiful, like, romantic, loving breakdowns, and I like wasn't having that. And I felt like if I didn't have that, that's how I would lose you, because I wasn't falling in this same way. And I felt like, no, I'm not feeling enough yet. I have to feel more, because if I don't, but at the same time, that was me feeling, because I was like, if I don't feel more, I'm gonna lose him. And so I was trying to, I fell into we had to talk about like, it felt like the narrative of our relationship and the narrative of how people saw it was starting to go a different direction. And I felt like I was pulled into two different places. And that was starting to feel weird on me. And that was the kind of the source of, we kind of severed for a little bit and then came back together. I think I got a little bit ahead of myself here, but like,
no, I think
that's
it's
a good
valuable.
place to go.
Yeah.
I mean, to put it bluntly, what I'm receiving, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like Paisley really wanted you to be gay and you just weren't. That's kind of how I interpreted it at the time. And, you know.
Yeah, it was a difficult position of like I am undoubtedly having massive feelings for this person, and I am upset by that, because I'm also seeing this person as a really great friend, and they don't want that. Like, he doesn't want this. Like, Phoenix doesn't want this, but there's this undeniable chemistry also happening at the same time. It was somewhere between like a gay relationship and bros. You know, it wasn't we weren't just bros and we weren't gay together. It was in this gay, not this gray, not gay, gray fluctuating area
in the gay area
that we were navigating a space of new, and we were wanting two different things, but also wanting the same thing at the same time, of like, I wanted to be able to move myself into this area, but it was just undeniably pulling me into this, because this new side of me was awakening that, oh, I can have feelings for men, that I can want to actually be in a relationship with a man. And I'm like, well, if I were to, because I also had a lot of aversion at that time, especially around queer men, was that I was like, well, like this fits perfectly. This person that's sort of having, like possibly having this similar-ish experience to me, where it's like revolutionizing what like sexuality is, and what relating is as two men. So I was constantly stuck in this flow, and like also feeling guilty. I constantly carried this guilt in me of like, I want what he doesn't want, but I'm semi-convinced at the same time that he does want it, because there's this narrative going on in my head and in my body that I can't like let go of. I can't. It's as much as I go mentally. Phoenix says, I don't want that. There's still this part of me, but does he? Like I feel like he does. It's like, is it his conditioning? Is it family? Is it this? Is it that? Like me convincing myself that there is something a bit more than what you're telling me point blank.
I wanna like not tangent, but I guess go a little deeper and make it about me for a minute, because that's kind of what I do.
All right.
No, only because I know that feeling that you're talking about. Like, I think in our society, it's very black and white. It's like romantic / sexual attraction, or friendship, which is platonic. And there's like, and it's like I guess like the norm is that you should just know if you're into someone or if you're not. And I know in my experience, I've often been in infatuation with my friends, but not clocked it at the time, and not thought that it was possible for me to have those kinds of feelings but we're friends. And, it's like, I don't get turned on when I'm around you, so it can't therefore be romantic. But there is a thread that's separate to sex. It's like this kind of more like, it's charged with like significance and specialness. And it's really difficult to navigate a friendship when you feel it. And for you, it's so clear. It's like, I would die for you. I would fucking go to the ends of the earth for you. I love you so much. And then not knowing or thinking the other person feels the same, but they don't. And I don't think that space is often talked about in our society. Like that, it is the gray zone. It's like, am I really just fucking like in love with you, but I don't know it? Or like, what is it? And not having the language even to describe it is such a frustrating place to be.
Yeah. I would also like to just say really quick, because you were saying you carried this guilt, Paisley. I also had guilt on my end for like the same thing of like, but just the different side of like, I wanted to meet you so badly, and like I couldn't. And like I was also like questioning a lot too, like same questions you were asking, like, is it my conditioning, or is this or is it not? Like, do I actually want it and it is my conditioning, or is it not my conditioning and I actually don't want this? And it fostered this like really big doubt that really like messed with me inside. And at the end of the day, I just had like, whatever the answer was, conditioning or not conditioning, I had to pull back. It was like, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I'm going to say it's a no, because it's like too intense otherwise for me. But I felt really guilty about it. And maybe it was the pacing, because I feel like since then, like whatever my rate of bloom was, I don't even want to say bloom, because I don't want to necessarily say that one direction is the trajectory that leads to blooming, but like since like but I will slow burn since meeting you and going and experiencing our relationship and beyond. Even though I haven't been with men, I've noticed when I check inside of me, I've been more open to sexual spaces with men should they hypothetically happen. It's not like a full body no anymore, or the trepidation is significantly diminished. So, maybe it was conditioning, but it was just, I don't know. I guess I won't go into that because I don't fully know the answers there. But it's just like whatever it was, that either the timeline was significantly longer. I just needed my own process, whatever it was just way in a different place. And it was, so I also carried this guilt of wanting to meet you. And
yeah, I hear that.
At the same time we watched the OA, and Alpha, you're just talking about like these people you would die for and stuff, but it just reminded me of like, I very much so felt this of like, they have that dance, the like, you all know the one.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like, yeah, Paisley, like if you died, I said this that one night, I was like, I would dance over your grave for days. And like, and I just like, yeah, as Alpha said, that like people you would die for is like, that was very much so my reality. And it's just like, oh, like, yeah. So it's this deep, profound love that I was very confused in how to express. And it led to a lot of pain. Because there were times where I was feeling that, but then also times where I resented you because you were so confronting to look at. And, times where we were hanging out with another third party bro and another third party bro plus a dog. And you and I would feel like so much more like I would enjoy a hug with him so much more because it was so much less confronting. Just because you at that moment were this mirror that was just like, I don't know what that reflection is. And it was hard. Yeah,
so
I think there's so many, like the unpacking this can go in so many different directions, but I feel like a thing that is very present across the timeline of our relationship, and it's a good thing to actually bring up around, I think the picture is being painted already around ex-demons is like, you and I were never like traditional partners in any way, but there also was this level of like partnership of like, we had at times referred and categorized of partnership and then not, and like, again, just like trying to find words and labels and things that we could put this in, like, let's try and capture this beast, because we don't know where this fits, and not only like as just from an outside, like someone else viewing it, but also for ourselves in the manner of like, at times there was like two different boxes we're putting the thing in and separating it. And then there was times where it was like just pushing out, like we severed from one another a few times throughout the journey of meeting back then, whenever that was, early 2019, I think, or 18.
I think
18 to now is like, we've had lots of formations of like trying to figure it out, and then there's been moments where we've cut one another out of our lives to just go, it's too much, I can't fucking deal with this, even though we didn't want to do that, like we wanted to figure it out, it was just too much, I think that's a thing to look at, is like these severings.
Yeah, definitely the severings.
I'd like to ask, because I know, there were a few moments where it was like, okay, we got to let it go either way, whichever one of you had the moment where it's like, I hit my limit, I need to bounce now. Which ones for you personally, both, were like the most those moments where you're like, I can't do it anymore? Like, what was it that got you to that point where you're like, I can't do this anymore?
I think you go, Phoenix, because you had those first before me.
Yeah. What do you mean? Had those first before?
Like you had the moments first of like, I can't do this anymore, you know?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was more like,
Yeah.
why?
True.
Which I can go in a bit more once you share
True.
yours.
Yeah, the first one, we were having a talk. Well, I know, yeah, we were in Balmain. We were up near my place. And I forget what the initial half of the share was, but afterwards we walked around and I continued to share. And in myself, I was like continuing to go deeper. And I was like trying to really penetrate. And yeah, I had some other complexes at the moment of like, you were a great cultivator. I saw you as a great cultivator of like in the music industry, in your art, and experiences for other people. And like you are still a role model for me. So I saw you. I had trouble, especially at that time in my life, as seeing myself as fully equal to you. And that night I remember saying like, I feel for the first time, whatever I just shared, I can't remember what it was before. For the first time, I feel like I'm the same height as you. And like we were walking and I was just sharing into this space and, mentioning all the confrontation of the reflection that you represented for me at the time and all these things that were kind of stacked on top of each other. And then at this night of me thinking, I'm just like, all right, I've like, good job, me. I've shown up once again. Like, this is me talking right to my heart, right to my soul. For whatever reason, after that, it didn't land that way for you. Your experience of that share was completely different. And in that moment, all those things that were stacked up just came crashing down for me. And I remember I actually felt a little like, all right, like it felt almost like a con. I'm like, all right, what is your goal? Like, what are you trying to do right now? If I'm showing up like this and you're fully saying, in my mind at that time, it was, you were saying you didn't see it. You weren't feeling it that way. I'm like,
someone's mic is, yeah, I think whatever you had next to your mic to send alpha was making it.
There's also
I'm
a train
muted.
train that's going by in mine.
It's a train.
I think that
Don't worry.
might be the train.
Sorry to just mid your share. I just
derail it.
Go.
No,
Hey.
But yeah, so I just remember feeling a little scared and unsure of what the full situation was, because the difference in experience was so different that it shocked me. I was like, my experience of that share was so completely different and yours was so completely different that I like couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh, like I feel manipulated in this moment. Like he's like, there's no way he didn't feel that share the same way. And he's trying to steer it this other way. And I remember after like all those months of like, the showing up and that I was doing and that you were doing too, but just like the heaviness of all of it just came crashing down. And I just completely had to snap into a completely different place where I was like about to just get out of we were in your car at that point. And I was about to just like get up and leave. And my voice just flattened because in that moment I was just done. I was like, all right, what do you want? And like, I snapped completely. And then I knew after that night when I got out of the car, I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like, that's that.
Yeah.
I feel like I just want to thank you for sharing, because it feels like you're sharing from the place, like from the emotional place. And that's so real to hear that. And I think everyone can relate to having that moment where your reality and you doing your absolute best to articulate your reality to someone is received through their own stuff, and they feed it back to you and it's like, what? It's like, it feels like everything crumples, and it's just like, I think that's one of the most devastating moments in connection with another human being. Because it's like, I just fucking gave you this picture of a sunset and you told me that it was a fucking picture of a garbage truck, or, you know what I mean? It's like, are we not experiencing the same world anymore. It's so huge because you, especially because you've built up this reality of this is our world, and we see the world in this way, and then when that disconnect happens, it's such a devastating thing for both people. On the one hand, the person who feels like, fuck, you really don't get me, and then you close down, and the other person receives you closing down. It's like, oh fuck, I fucked it. Oh my God, I've really fucked it, and now it's not salvageable. It's devastating on both sides.
Yeah.
I just really feel that moment, that pivotal moment of a breakup, whether it's friendship or romantic or whatever. It's like, it's fucking agonizing.
Yeah, I remember like in my experience there was like what I was hearing all these things, but there was this level of yearning like for you to like be very direct with me and just be like, this is like, because you're sharing the things was great, but I didn't fully feel it in the manner, because this is internally a big thing for you, but for me, it's not landing in my world. It's like you could have said the same things, but just with a certain level of like that dark masculine like penetration. But then that's me hoping for that, and then how it turned out was you did do that in the manner of like, get the fuck out of my life, I'm like, no. But like I laugh now, but at that moment, that was probably the most like pathetic I had felt afterwards. I remember like especially in learning around this male relating, and then also gayness, and it still plays out a bit to this day of like categorizing things in heteronormative ways. And I remember like I can like visually remember the moment of like I think it was like the next day or something, you had told me like, you're the fuck out of my life, and I was like, well, I couldn't comprehend that, just the way you couldn't comprehend that I did not comprehend you. As like, and like Alf was saying, and we're both in this a state of confusion of how things had got here. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, fucking bawling my eyes out, and I'm trying to call you to be like, yo, like, where, like, I'm sorry, and like, can we just go back to where we were? Like, I fucked up. And B, I'm projecting like the like floppy feminine, like essentially my mum onto myself, like going like that, like, I love my mum, don't get me wrong, but there's times where, especially growing up, where I've had the conditionings of my dad and been like, ugh, pathetic, like, and that's how I felt about myself. I'm like, oh my, I can't help. I'm calling him, like, please answer your phone. I never do that. I never fucking do that. And here I am doing it. And like, you're also out with someone else at that time, and you're like, I'm with this person, I can't talk to you right now. And I'm like, oh, like, just broken and just cannot conceptualize. And then at the same time, like, a breakup is like, we had other things planned, it was like, is your birthday coming up? And I had the funeral, my first funeral tour, and you were to come along. I had trained up like you to come and support, and Nath, and I was like, how am I going to make the funeral work? I had all these plans made out to celebrate your birthday when we got to Byron. And it was like, a full proper relationship manner of like, oh, but we have a future together. There's actually these things that we have planned, and all this specialness that I was ready to give to you. As what do I do with that now? And I was just like in this loop of spiraling, like, fuck, I'm wrecked now, and I feel pathetic about it. And that was just, again, bringing up that like, I've never felt this way about a guy. It wasn't even my boyfriend or anything. It's just like a friend, but not knowing where to put that at that time. That was a lot.
The looming Byron trip also added weight to me, just because one of our plans was a intense one for me, and like
yes
in the month leading up, like, I didn't look at my life beyond that trip. I was like, I haven't survived it yet, and I have this thing, and I was fully like dead in that month. Like I was like going through. So that definitely, it just like added fuel to the fire of like internal pressure.
Yeah, just to give for context of people what as, and it actually super breaks my heart this moment realizing that was a thing that didn't manifest on a level beyond you and I, is someone that was extremely special, still is very extremely special to me, was going to facilitate a medicine trip for us, and Phoenix at that time hadn't done that, and not that long, like a year later, that person passed away and I didn't get to have that journey. Yeah, which is pretty upsetting in this moment when I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that in your world. Yeah, there was no life beyond that moment, which I think was also putting an additional pressure on you and I.
It definitely was. Yeah.
Huge. Well, let's move a little bit fast forward to what was your moment, Paisley, when you were like, I'm fucking done.
Well, that was the last one. Like the last time we had it was there's so much context to it, but like, and reasons for where Phoenix shared what I'm going to share is, but like essentially we had like ended up having to have like boundaries and agreements between us to figure out how to navigate this best. And at that time, I had started to distance myself a bit from Phoenix in a manner of like, hey, look, because we were still like sending each other poems and holding hands and cuddling in bed and whatnot. And eventually I was like, I have to stop this, like, because that's the only way I'm gonna untangle myself from this like projection that I keep putting onto us and onto Phoenix. And in that, there was more and more distancing from me. It was like, we can still be friends, but intimacy on that level is just not available for me. I can't tell you I love you even as a friend. I can't share poems of you. I can't do all this stuff. And it was making me more and more distant. And there was a point where I didn't even want to be super vulnerable with Phoenix. And there's this moment, I guess, this context to be shared, but my bits and pieces is like, it got to a point where we were having circles at Cult Mansion here, and Phoenix is there, and we're doing some sharings, and I hadn't shared yet, and Phoenix goes, and it's like nighttime by this point, and Phoenix is like, so it was my birthday today, and my heart was just like, oh, that's where we are. I've forgotten his birthday. And then it went further into a share of like, I think I'm going to go back home to America. I feel isolated. I feel not connected to anyone. And I just went into this, like that guilt that had been carrying throughout, just like hit a pinnacle. And then my share was going to be about something completely different. And then I was like, just went into this guilt. Phoenix is like, hey, do you want to have this conversation? And I was like, I can't do it with you. Like, I need to process on my own, like I can't be vulnerable with you right now. And he's like, no, I want to do it. I was like, okay, some things happened. Phoenix couldn't end up doing it because of the stuff that's going on at that time in the States. And that's where his parents are. You can reflect all this better afterwards. And then essentially it was like, I can't do that anymore. And I was just like, like, I think the words was like, I can't do that right now. I will, like, can we do it later? How does that feel in your world? And I'm like, in my world, I just said yes to something I didn't even want to do, but I trusted you. And then you took it away from me without in a week's time, whatever. It was like, we'll do it when it feels right. I'm like, when is right? And I was like, it essentially said, it just makes me not want to share with you. And that's when Phoenix's mode of that's it. You started bringing that up of like, I can't deal with this cunt, that's my interpretation. And you're like, let's meet up on this day. But I didn't fully know this yet. I didn't fully know if that's where you were coming from. And then so we had met up. And to me, it's like, oh no, he's shifted things to go, okay, like maybe I am just going to put whatever my thing is aside and actually hold the space that I said I would do. And then we meet up, and we had this thing that we did that also was sort of borrowed from mine and Alpha Mama's relationship of like, here's something I wrote about you while I hated you. And usually it ends with a bit of a like, I'm calling you out and calling you back in. And I had done it to Phoenix a few times. And he's like, I wrote a letter for you. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I'm really excited for this. And he's going through it. And then it gets to the end. I'm like, oh, I feel really, really bad. There was no call back in. It was like the words I remember that I'm paraphrasing, but the end was just like, you hurt yourself on me and I'm not here anymore for you to fix yourself on, you know? And I was like, oh, like you forgot the call back in. And it's long story short, you're like, I don't feel a call back in right now. And then I'm trying to like figure out this space, and everything I was trying to figure out, Phoenix was like, no, like, I don't want to hear that. No, I don't want to hear that. But it was still like an invitation to talk. I couldn't figure out what I needed to do. And then after he told me no, I just was like, you know what? You can get fucked, you know, like fuck off. Like you put me in a box and you want to keep me in this box. And I was raging. Like I was in full Hulk mode. I was so angry.
I hadn't seen you like that before.
I was so angry, and I'm walking away. I had this bottle in my hand. I'm trying to walk away, and I had that full, again, like that drama mode in me that I wanted to do as I'm walking away. We're in a park at Newtown, and I'm inside. I just want to turn around and just spit venom at him as I'm walking away. Like, you know what? Fuck you, and fuck this. You know, you fucking, you know, that's what I really wanted to do. And I'm trying to hold it in. I'm shaking. I keep dropping this bottle as I'm walking away. I'm like, like, let me just get away from this cunt. And I'm also like zoomed out and having a bit of a laugh at it at the same time, because I'm like imagining from his perspective, and also if we ever mend this, that we can laugh about it later. But at the forefront, I'm mad as fucking hell. And yeah, that was just the end for me. I was just like, nah, like I cannot do this anymore. We are not gelling, and no matter what we do, it's fucked, and I'm fucking sick of it. And I had to get big mad. I went home and I fucking threw down. I screamed into my pillow. I punched my pillow. I chucked a tantrum, and then I ended up doing a little footage of it, and that video went. It's my most popular video on Instagram right now. So you know, valuable content. Cheers.
Everyone said I needed this today.
Everyone said I needed this today. But yeah, I was mad, and yeah, there's more to it.
I remember you calling me and telling me.
Yeah. I remember like not knowing what I was like on the train. I'm like I need to figure out how to get this out somewhere because I'm in a very public place. Like I needed to get that. I was angry. Yeah, which felt good to feel. I think that had been like cooking up for years at that point, you know.
Yeah
But that was and it took us a while to especially it took me a while to move through that. Yeah,
me too.
I feel like it'd be nice because, you know, I think everyone who's been through any kind of breakup can relate to the level of like when you're just at your wit's end and you just can't push anymore, and it's just fucked and it's broken, and it's like you hate the person with a vengeance, but you can only feel that way because you love them. If you didn't care for them, you wouldn't feel so charged about it. It would just be like whatever. But because there's so much love that it flips and it goes, you know, toxic, and it's I hate you. What was it for the both of you that made it so that you can, like, because being able to be on this episode and talk and have these conversations, and now you're both in a very different place now, there's a lot more neutrality, and there's a lot more, shared common ground again. What was it that made you fight for this, to come back to friendship? Because you could, both of you at different times could have just been like, fuck you, I fucking hate you, I don't need you in my life, piss off.
Can I request we can either pause, or Phoenix can share right now, because I need to piss, as I told before air that this is going to happen. But if you want to share, Phoenix, you can continue to share, because I can hear in my Bluetooth what you're saying from the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
We can do either way. If you feel comfortable with me going to piss, or we can pause before you answer.
No, I'm all right with you pissing. Yeah, I'm all right with that.
It's going to be like a voyeurism.
Everyone at home, are you all right with pacing?
Yeah, everyone do a quick check-in. How does the body feel with that?
I'll be right back.
Cool. Okay, go away.
Yeah. And this does bring us back up to, like modern day, current, our relationship, which is still like, it's a scary relationship for me, because it's so meaningful, but at this moment, and since we started talking again, it's felt so fragile. And like, I feel like it's this tiny little flame that I'm just kind of holding a hand around against the wind. Just like, at least it's fire, at least it's lit, at least it's going. But I'm so scared to let the wind hit it or add more wood to it. Like, I'm so, and that was the most confronting thing about coming on to this podcast in this episode, because it's like, yeah, if we're gonna, because when Paisley and I eventually did talk again and meet up, neither of us felt the need to really unpack the events of that day. So this right now is actually the first time we're really talking about it in a little bit more detail, kind of going back into the place of that day. And that's what made me so scared of like going back in. What if I go back in and come back out, and the things that come back out blow out that tiny little flame? That does mean a lot to me. So I'll answer the first question about how we got to this point, but then I would also like to share my side of the last the blowout sort of thing as well.
Sure.
I'm back for the listeners.
Nice.
But yes, I agree on this tiny little flame. Let's continue on your side there.
Yeah. So I was also, I'll swear too, fucking pissed. Like leaving, I was like, even though I sat there, and like, even though I wasn't the one that, I said this to you before, but like, even though I wasn't the one that stood up and walked away, I was so glad you did, because I was also done too. And like, so I sat there for a little bit longer, and I just kind of walked around Newtown a bit. But like, I was like vibrating inside. Like, I was just like, whoa, like intense energy. And like, I was pretty okay, but just over the next couple weeks, like every now and then, like an image would pop in my head, and this wave of fury would come back. And I was like, the audacity, like, just like it came back, and like, oh, like, can't believe him. Like, and now I'm here stuck with this anger because of him. Like, I have this anger. But the thing that allowed it to, for me to be in a place where eventually months later, when you did reach back out, to be in a place where I could fully say, yeah, let's meet up, was over those weeks, as those waves were happening, I acknowledged the anger, but every single time I sucked a little venom out and I spat it out. Every single time it was like, no, I know this is in me. I don't, at the very least, if we're not seeing each other again, I don't want to attach this anger to him. So every time it came up, I was actively having the anger, but just like pulling it off of him, detaching it from him, and then moving it through. And then every time it moved through, sometimes it took a few hours, whatever it was, but every time without a doubt came through. And as the weeks went, as the months went, they became just more and more infrequent, or less frequent and less intense, and just continuing every single time, pull the charge away from him. He's still a beautiful person that I love and respect. I respect his work. I respect what he does, all these things. I just had this anger on him. It was best for us to go different ways at the time, but full love and respect to him, and just like pulling it away until eventually it wasn't there anymore. The charge was gone.
Yeah, that's similar to me in the manner of like, similar to that experience around Byron and a funeral tour. Was like we were still connected in certain ways from that severing, and I can't remember the full things, but like, yeah, I was just pissed. You had reached out afterward and said, "Hey, do you want to have a mediator to like just hash this out and sort of like figure out whether this is done, whatever." I don't know what your full intentions were, but you had messaged that, and I was like, no, it's very clear with what I said that's full stop. That's where I was at. That anger was just like fully justified in that moment to me. That I was like, no, I lead with fuck you energy right now. But there's also like throughout this whole thing, like you're saying, like I was like, I still know Phoenix is a good person, but just in this dynamic, it's a no. And you had reached out, I think, because for one of your books, there was a drawing that I was going to do, and you asked if I still wanted to do it. And like part of it, you just like in the email was like, if you don't reply, I'm just going to take that as a no and understand. And I don't think I replied. And then there was, I think, another thing, I can't remember, but then eventually I just shot you a message via WhatsApp. I think it was just like, hey, look, like when I'm not replying to you and not wanting to talk to you, this isn't a place of like trying to punish you. I want to let you know, I know you're a good person. I just not good for me right now. I could hold that even in the anger. I knew like this is special. It's just not it right now. And then you had reached out again as for this person that had passed away, this mentor of mine. I had gifted you something that he had gifted to me. And then you had messaged me and was like, hey, I think I'm done with this thing. Do you want it back? And I sat with that for a while. And then when it came up to the 1 year anniversary, I was like, yeah, I would like that, and you were like, I can come drop it off to yours. Like, we don't have to see each other. I'll just put it in the backyard. And I was super grateful for that. And yeah, still holding that point. I know he's a good person. And there's another moment which syncs up with a few other moments, but I remember, so like my favorite place to go get food when we're not in lockdown is at what we call the Luxor Zone, which is Golden Lotus in Newtown. And on my way there, I was like this is months later. I think this all happened in November is when the severing happened.
Yeah.
And then we didn't talk again until February, March, I think. But yeah, somewhere along there. Oh, it was the day before Invasion Day. So it's January 25th.
Okay.
I was going to the Luxor Zone, and on my way there, I was like, oh, this is a time that I would usually message Phoenix, go, hey, do you want to come meet up? And that was the first time I had that. Like, it was like 2 months later. And then I was like, well, I can't do that because we hate each other. And then I'm there. I get there. I pull my book out, and Phoenix walks right past me as I'm like, just sitting down, and walks past with this woman. And I'm like, I look at Phoenix. I look at this woman. I'm like, oh, like that's his new girlfriend. These weren't doing anything at that moment, but I was like, that's his new girlfriend. Like, okay. And then as I'm like taking the last slurp of my Luxor, you walk past again, and we make like eye contact, and then she also looks at me and like peers into my soul, and I'm like, okay, like that was a very strange experience. And then for me, what was on top of like just knowing the specialness and seeing the ways that we're being sort of called back in, like such as that experience, and just me letting go of like over and over, let go of that anger and just return to that space of like that, is beneath it all, is Phoenix is a good person. I don't have any expectations on being friends again or whatever, but regardless, he's a special person in my life and I don't want to hold venom towards him. And then I think the last thing that pushed me over was starting to dating Tim and being the first man. And I'm having a proper, like, I'm falling in love with this person, with this man specifically. Was like, I could see things coming up that I had brought over from you and I. And I was like, that's not fair on Tim as well. Like, me holding on to this with Phoenix, I think I've got to go and like reach out to him. This is the last push that I'm getting into going, okay, it's time to reach out, I was like, let's see if he's open to a talk. That was, so overall, I just wanted to clear the air from the start, but I never was able, my pride wasn't able to get out of the way. And then eventually it was like, okay, this has gone beyond just me now. This is going to start affecting my relationships moving forward. I need to clear the air here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I'll just jump back to the severance, the last severance, because for me it was like coming off of, I was in a sensitive place of experiencing just like the space that you already mentioned that you needed, and that we'd like discussed, and those new boundaries coming into place, and the slow sort of like renegotiation of our dynamic as we were figuring it out. And then also at the same time just experiencing like the isolation of lockdown, and that at that moment in my life it really started to weigh on me, and that was the first time I'd really like actually felt loneliness, like to an extent where it was uncomfortable in my body, and I wasn't it was hard. So at the same time I start getting these invitations to start coming back, but at that moment, like, I was essentially starving for connection. Like I was it was like I was starving, and it was like, here's like a piece of bread. Like it wasn't enough, but at the same time I knew what you needed and wanted to respect that, but I'm also in a like ravenous place, like really intensely needing like connection and someone there. And like and then yeah, we have that thing like you mentioned about sharing about my birthday and stuff, and then we're talking about like, yeah, do you want to have this conversation? And then the thing, so like what I told you about like how I just decided I'm going back to the States, and I kind of want to sit and process that decision a little bit. That was true. The thing that triggered that thought process of me wanting that, and I actually feel guilty about this because it feels so surface level and petty, was I actually just had someone ask me if I wanted to go on a date that day, and it's like, could not be more surface level. And at the same time, when that offer to go on a date came through, I wanted to do that more than talk to you in that moment. And then I was like feeling a bit of resent in that moment, because it was like, I'm available for all these months, and just at this one period, now I'm bound to talk to you. And I had agreed to, so yeah, I'm bound to talk to you because it was my word and I said I would. But like in my body, I'm feeling this resentment around that line of thinking, like, now, like, why does it have to be now, sort of thing. So I say these things, and then the word that really set me off in the response text, because I was like, yeah, how does that feel to you, was, you're like, I don't feel safe to share with you anymore. And then that just like sent me, because I'm like, you don't feel safe. Like, I've been here my experience is like, I've been here this whole time. I've been waiting this whole time. And suddenly I'm here and asking for a little bit of space on my side. And suddenly I'm no longer safe. I'm a dangerous thing. And that just like hit so hard. I was just red fury, like bubbling up. That same drop dead that I mentioned before, where it was like my voice sort of flattens, although I wasn't talking to anyone, voice flattens and I don't like, I'm over it. But at the same time, over it with a rage. Like, and I was like, and that's why I needed to write everything down because I knew I wouldn't be able to keep my thoughts straight, blah, 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 blah. And I just came in with that heat. That's the heat I was coming in with. Like, yeah. And I'm sorry. I want to say I'm sorry for that date thing. Like, I did want to go on that date, but I did feel really, I hated myself in that moment because I did want to go on that date, but I also loved you and still love you and care about you. So it's this deep conflict of like, looking at myself, here's me wanting to go on this date with this person I've never met, have no feelings for, have nothing for. Here's me wanting to do this over talking to this person and reconnecting with this person that I should love and should want to see so much. Who am I in this moment? What is going on? And I felt really, that was a wrestling match with myself.
Thank you.
That's really profound, actually. Just from like a observatory point. I don't know if I'm using the correct language, but the way that our bodies betray us, in a sense. It's like,
I feel that.
Yeah, and one thing that I long for is for human beings to get to a point where we can hold space for those desires that we judge as like, I shouldn't want this. I shouldn't feel this. I should be feeling this. I should be prioritizing this. Like, my loyalty should be here. And yet I know, if I'm being really honest, my truth is this thing that I wish it wasn't. And it's hard for us to be okay and at ease with that, because our conditioning societally tells us that to be a good person, you should, prioritize the person that you've had the longer relationship with, or whatever it is, like all of these arbitrary things that we think this is what it means to be a good person. And so our relationships are all, built on these kind of shoulds and shouldn'ts. And it's painful because we deny ourselves what our authentic desires are and what our feelings are in that moment. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it doesn't work anyway to try and be the good person, because even if you try and do the right thing, that desire is going to find a way to sneak out, and like it's got a snake head that's going to bite in some way.
First of all, thank you for that apology. That definitely, it's, such a confusing thing to straight up being a human, but like awareness of like in that moment that you mentioned just then before the apology of like, there was a date, because I didn't have that information until this moment. I was like, oof, like, the person back then just felt it, and then at the same time, I'm like, but here we are. So it does it affect me? Like I'm questioning that at that time, and I'm thinking about this tiny flame you're talking about when I was in the toilet. All of that's hitting me at once. And, but also, like what Alpha's saying, that like your desire is your desire. And at that moment, what you were pushing against with me was like, you were already in that moment of like feeling like the flame is so tiny. And I was the one bringing a lot of boundaries and agreements to how this can work, and you were agreeing to them, but I feel like I definitely created a container that was more beneficial to me than to you, in the premise of beneficial to us, which there's truth to, but also Paisley leaning. Like it was I get it, you know. It's like I'd rather go out on a date with someone new that I don't have any fucking rules with, you know. So I get it at the same time. It's like I'm hurt and understand in this moment, you know.
Yeah.
That was the thing I did not want to say. That was the bit I was like, I gotta say this one thing because I really
respect.
Yeah.
Respect to you for actually leaning into that discomfort, because that's the liberating thing.
Yeah.
There's so many things that we allow ourselves to conceal, thinking that it's gonna, if I reveal this thing, I'll break it. But then we break ourselves by not revealing it.
It's the elixir of truth, you know. Sometimes it's bittersweet, but like overall, like I prefer knowing that than not knowing that, you know. It's like that. Yeah, I get the full picture now, you know, and it just gives me more of a chance to go, okay, now I can take a bit more accountability on my side, you know, that with my awareness, like that I'm very grateful and privileged to have, is just like, okay, cool, yeah, I get it. Like, I wouldn't have wanted to hang out with me then either, you know, at that point.
You were hard work.
How's hard work, you know? For we weren't even in a relationship, you know, like but we were in a relationship that like we weren't in a relationship, but we had so many things that were like a relationship, you know?
Well, let's get that languaging a little bit sharper, because yes, you were in a relationship. It wasn't a romantic partnership or a lovership, but yes, it's a relationship.
I fully, like, a few times, just as I said, like, straight up, you're a partner I don't have sex with, like, but we are, like, we're partners basically.
Well, that's like, I think that is the best definition there, is like we're partners that we don't have sex, because you're saying we weren't, like, using that language of not romantic partners, is like there was a lot of romance between us two, you know, like for instance sharing poetry and creating these games around poetry and art and sharing about how we care about each other and whatnot, and pushing the envelope of what friendship can be, is like it was really based off romance and allowing that to be in there. So that's why it's so hard to find languaging. But yeah, definitely, a partner that I don't have sex with is like,
wow,
it was like an asexual relationship.
That should be the podcast title: A Partner That I Don't Have Sex With.
That's clickbait for sure.
It's so good.
Let's do it.
Amen.
But you know, it's interesting, and of course timely, because it's so funny, you know, with the song Ex Demons, when I released it, of course it's about my past romantic partnership, and I knew that it was going to be healing, but I didn't think about all the friendship breakups that it would bring to the surface. And the past 2 days, that's what's been really alive for me, those connections that aren't romantic but are still charged. And when there's a loss of those friendships, like the pain that's created for me personally, and like listening to both of you navigate the gray/gay area of your friendship, it's really, no, but it's really cathartic to witness. Like, I think the thing that I'm loving the most is the willingness that you both have to be in the fire and stay in the fire. And that's something that I know my most enduring friendships have, when both parties are willing to stay in that fire of love. But it's the uncomfortable love. It's the uncomfortable refining and process and vulnerability. But it's like, if we can stay in here, like, even though it's really fucking hard, or at least if we can come back, and that's kind of what really forges these timeless soul connections. And I know that I've had a few friendships that just haven't been willing. Like I'm willing, but they're not willing. And so if both parties, if one party's willing and the other one's not, then it doesn't work. But both parties have to be willing. And that's been such a medicine, just listening to both of you share and what your journey has been in your process, because either one of you could have easily at any time just said, it's too hard. Like you're too hard, you're too difficult.
I think that brings up another thing for me of like that reconnection was that, the amount of times we had sat in the fire and there was these two fires that I was having to face at that moment of like, I don't know if I can deal with seeing him right now. It still hurts too much. It still burns. But then I was also not constantly, but enough in this loop of like, the last information I heard from him was he's going to go back home. And I just don't know if I can deal with the burn of him having gone home and not sorting this out to like at least creating neutral, a neutral experience that we didn't have to be best friends again, but I didn't want him to leave the country without that rekindling to some extent. So I chose to go into the fire again to avoid, the ambush of fire, this like circled in, and then of course there's always Zoom or whatever, reconnecting at different points in life, but it didn't feel right for me to go, no, it's not right that he goes home without this being fixed to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, like, honestly, because like I was saying to Alpha when you went to P, like when we first met up, neither of us were feeling super called to like go back to that time and like actually unpack and to an extent that's led to an amount of like trepidation, I guess, with our current state of relationship where I do have this like slight fear of like pushing too much. And it's like, I'm very excited that it's like, there's like connection burning and stuff, but it's like, we didn't unpack everything that was there. And like, I'm scared that, it's just like, there's a lot there. Like there's more there. It felt like there's more there than currently exists. And I don't know if it can take it. I feel like it would just be smothered. So there is this like, and it's a process and everything. And it's, there's the fear of, the fear of loss. Yeah.
Well, that's like as for people that are listening now, there's context outside of what we've shared so far of like the right now, like, because we've been in each other's space, but we've not had like super deep moments as of our reconnecting. You've come bouldering with Tim and I a couple of times, and you came here for a concert with your partner, and it's not been super dropped in kind of moments. And like we had an offering of that where I wanted to create a ritual for my birthday and we're going to go to the Blue Mountains, and then lockdown happened. So we couldn't get that. And then you've moved a bit more away, even though I wouldn't have been able to see you because I'm in lockdown. We're in lockdown. But now, when I reach out to you, I'm like, hey, do you want to do this podcast? You're like, yeah. And by the way, I'm moving out of Sydney in 2 weeks and we're in lockdown for another month. So it's like, this is sort of like the ceremony of, all right, goodbye. Like you're leaving Sydney and I can't even say goodbye to you in person,
Yeah. Part of me, and that's all, I'm very grateful thanks for creating the space, you two. And I'm very grateful for this because it's to an extent I was kind of glad that there was no opportunity to say goodbye, because I felt like it was too like at least now if I leave I have the excuse of it was locked down, I couldn't say goodbye, and then I get to leave knowing it survived. It's like when the movie ends, like it cuts to black without like, it's like, well, they didn't show them die on screen, So that means it didn't happen. It was that same energy. The scene changed. I have plausible deniability. So like that, it was the same thing of like, well, if we actually, if we actually went into a space to say like, hey, I'm moving, goodbye. One, there's the fear of like, does he even want to say goodbye to me in that way? Or like all these, and there's the chance of like the goodbye being unceremonious or not providing closure, or like there's the chance of the goodbye going badly. And I was like, at least if I don't say goodbye, the goodbye could not have gone badly, and at least it's an open story then. But it's just a lot of fear on my part.
I was thinking about that as you were sharing. I read something on Instagram today that was saying, like, how many times is it really just a case of like all these things that we're saying, what we really just want to say in those moments of conflict is, I don't feel safe with you right now. And it's like such a simple thing, but it's like to feel emotionally vulnerable, and the fact that we don't want to feel emotionally vulnerable, and all the things that we do to avoid just naming that, just like, I don't feel that if I'm vulnerable around you, I will be safe. And it's so simple, but it's the cause of so many conflicts.
Yeah, it takes a while to like feel safe, you know? I think a fascinating one, it can always happen so differently, you know, like for you and I, Alpha, when we were rekindling our friendship post-relationship, it took a while for you to feel safe around me, where I was like, what do you mean? You know, we tight, you know? Where
all of last year was a fucked year for me, as you know. It was horrible. But yeah, that feeling of safety, but it's an internal job.
And then with Phoenix and I, we're both like, you know, like sort of having to gauge one another and ourselves at the same time. It's like, it's a bit of a stare off, or a like whatever you want to call it, like who's going to get into the cold water more, or who's going to walk into the flame more, or whatever it is, to like, until eventually it's like, oh, the house stopped burning down, you know?
But I have that pattern. I notice even when there is no conflict, or like when I'm falling in love with a person, say, you know, in the initial progression of a relationship, where it's like, I really want to let myself go to the deep end, but I'm afraid that I'll be the only one there. You know, that I've talked to you about this before, Paisley. It's like, what if I'm in the deep end alone and I feel humiliated that I let myself go to the deep end, and now I'm like fully submerged and you're standing at the shore just fucking waiting for me. I feel like an idiot, you know? And it's like, it's that feeling of being for me anyway, it's like, how could I let myself be so stupid to be so exposed, or to be so vulnerable, and you didn't, you know? It's like, it's like a yucky feeling. But I think all of that would be alleviated if we were just willing to be the fool, you know, like willing to be the idiot, willing to be that, you know, that person drowning in the deep end, because you know that was your truth in that moment. That's how you felt.
And to not say to yourself in that situation, like, if like, oh, I went into the deep end, oh, what an idiot, like, instead like, good job, me, like to back yourself in the deep end, even if you're the only one there. And be I'm proud of myself for going in the deep end, not like, oh, I must have looked so stupid.
I think the responsibility is in it is like, rather than going from a drowning, going, it's your fault, I'm drowning, like, come save me. It's like that responsibility of like, I chose to go drown, you know, like that's the piece, you know. And in what I'm hearing from Phoenix, and a bit of a recap of what we had, is it's like, Phoenix was like, to what I'm hearing is like, you kept coming deeper with me, but it's like Paisley keeps going swimming out further and I'm exhausted, you know, like I'm paddling water.
That's a good analogy for that.
He's going deeper into the sea, and I just I don't know if I could go out that far. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good one.
I think that's a really beautiful key factor in creating relationships with people is finding, well, two things come to mind. One is like compatibility of like swimming ability in the deep end, you know, like, okay, some people really fucking love to go to that edge and be really like me, you know me, I'm like fucking drown me, bitch, like let my lungs fill with water, let me almost die, you know, that's me.
And then resuscitate me, we'll do it again.
Yeah, exactly. But some people don't want that, and neither should they have to want that. Some people, you know, like to swim in other particular area or just stay on the shore. It's still love and it's still valid. So like finding someone that you can be compatible with and learning to respect people's willingness. Like if that's all they're willing to do, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means like they're playing at their edge and that's where it is. Like if you want more, find more, but don't make them feel like they've done something wrong for doing the best and that they can do. And I think that's where we often fuck up in relationships, because the person who wants to go deep is like, and you know, you left me out there by myself and you know, you don't love me enough. And it's like, nah, like you chose that. And if I think if both people, or if maybe it's not both, maybe it's all people, could just back themselves at the level of depth that they personally choose to go and just fucking be there and enjoy it because you love it.
I think sorry, go Phoenix.
I like the specificity of like one person's like deep and depth is relative. Like one person's deep, like everyone's pool is different. One, like the west side of the pool. No, I'm not gonna say it like that, but like just because I was just that analogy expanded way too fast in my head. But just like pool, one part of the pool. Like but like it's like someone might be like, hey, I'm way out here in the deep. Come to me. And I'm like, this water is already bottomless to me here. Like this is my depth. I am at my edge. Like to go beyond this would be hurting me. Like it's not, but like my willingness is here. Like look at me, I'm in my deep. So it's the acknowledge, as well as if you move to a different place, surprise that might not be so deep to someone else, but it might be for the other person. So it's just being aware of everyone's relative level of depth and understanding each other's edges, and then having the courage to also admit where like it's not your fault, it's not my fault, but given where our edges are, this is not a place where we can explore, or like we might not be able to be in a romantic relationship, or we might not be able to have just a friend, or whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, where these edges are is not sustainable. And it's not like anyone's fault, but it's just like, this is not, at the end of the day, it's not available, and that's okay.
Yes.
Well, that's like, you know, not to make this an analogy off, but that's what it's about to be. It's like, like in my experience of what was happening, and there's just so many different ways that we can experience this pool, the sea, this lake, the whatever, is like, in my experience was like, yeah, I see Phoenix, he's in his deep, like he's in the deep ocean with me, and I want to be where he is. I want to be in both. I'm trying to get where he is, but I'm caught in a rip right now. I'm caught in this rip that I'm not aware of. Like, it's like, I'm going deeper, and this isn't what I've asked for. And on a certain level, obviously I have, but like, I'm experiencing this rip over here that's turning me like, from the gray to gay, and I'm not. like, no, I want to be friends, but I also am stuck in a rip, and I've chosen to go into it. You know, that was my experience of like, I'm swimming, I'm trying to come back to you, and I'm caught in a rip right now, and it's sending me in a whole different place right now.
That's a
Your
great
pantomime of ripping is really good.
That was amazing.
Maybe we're gonna have to do a visual. Yeah, we have to, for the one exclusive.
Paisley was trying to swim out of the gray zone into the gay zone. No, back the other way from the gay zone.
I'm trying to swim out of the gay zone. I'm trying to come back into gray, But I'm caught. I'm caught in this gay rip.
Well, it makes me think of the times in relationships where I've tried to drag my partners into the rip.
Yeah.
Like, I'm caught in this rip and you need to be in here with me, motherfucker. Because I can't be the only one in this rip right now.
Yeah.
If I'm going down, you are coming
You're
down.
coming with me.
We're going out.
It's so toxic, though.
Yeah,
It's so toxic. I recognize that as a core pattern that plays out.
Guys, go.
Yeah, as a core pattern that plays out in so many relationships, mine included, the times that I've wanted to drag people down with me, because that in my psyche, that's a form of intimacy. If we're both caught in the rip together, that's like we're bonding, this is intimacy. But it's so toxic, because why the fuck should anyone have to suffer unnecessarily, especially if I love them? Like, being able to, I think something that I'm learning is like being able to respect the distinction between your experience and your partners or your friends. It's like if you're in a really bad place and your partner's in a really great place, can that be okay? Can those two contradictory experiences coexist in the relationship container? Can it be okay? Or do you always have to be on the same page? Like I think it's a bit unrealistic that you're always going to be on the same page in your individual personal life. And yet we so often struggle when we're not on the same page.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, I've experienced it a couple times, but it just kind of brought me back to what Paisley was saying about the boundaries he was setting that were Paisley leaning. It's like at the end of the day, when you're in a relationship, or like, any form of relationship, and the boundaries, if you have to put down a boundary, on some extent, if the other person isn't feeling called to place that same boundary, if it's not coming from them, but they're honoring it for you, it's going to be you leaning. And sometimes that might constrict the other person. And it's kind of, I guess it kind of reminded me of that, just because it's like innately that we're creating a sense of not on the same page-ness, but we're just kind of always navigating the pages. Like I've had to put down boundaries with other partners at different times, just like with very specific requests, and they're my requests. It's not them asking. So I'm asking for the relationship to change shape in favor of me. That might actually put them in a place of discomfort, but I'm needing this because I'm in discomfort right now. So it's requests. I don't know. The page ratios are always shifting.
Yeah. And I think that's, for me anyway, like, I think the most important thing is that those boundaries are fluid, that they're like, yes, cool, this is the boundary. I can honor that for now, but that's open to negotiation, because maybe in a month's time,
absolutely,
I'm no longer comfortable with honoring that boundary, or maybe in a month's time, I don't need that boundary anymore. It served its purpose, and now we can renegotiate. And that's where, I guess, to bring it up again, my beef with traditional monogamy culture is that there are so many unspoken expected boundaries. It's like, you should just know that this is inappropriate, or you should just know that you should do this. You should just know that that's out of bounds. And it's not ever discussed, and it's not ever agreed upon openly. And then when someone fucks up, there's all of this shame and like the guilt, because it's all ambiguous. And then everybody, not everybody, that's a big call, but like most people in traditional monogamous relationships are constantly compromising and denying their own authentic desires to fit into this mold of traditional monogamy, where actually all they're doing is staying in that because they're avoiding the unknown of, if I explore something different, it's too much unknown and I will flip out. So I'll just go with this comfortable known that actually it's not really comfortable, but it's better than what I don't know.
Yeah. I think just us humans, like, navigating boundaries is this it takes a while to build the muscle to learn how to set it. Like, first of all, see that you've created boundaries that you've not communicated, then learning to communicate boundaries, learning to respect boundaries, learning how to say, I don't want to do that boundary, or how to make it fluid and shift and change. It takes time to do that, because it's like that level of like, you know, for instance, in that moment, a part that I'm upset with, and I'm sure people have experienced, is like, there's a certain level of like, fuck, I just wish you would say, I don't want to do that boundary, you know, like just to go, no, like, I hear that you need that, but I actually can't meet that. And just, that's one of my, I'm quite strong with boundaries in my relationships. And what that often happens is like people going, that they agree to it and then break it and go, you just have really strong boundaries. I'm like, you fucking listen, you chose it, you know. It says it's responsibility on both sides of going, yeah, you agreed to it, but also I'm a very boundary person, so of course, you know, I'm leaving not much room for you to, you know, expectations of perfection when things are going to fuck up. Rules are to be broken, and we are constantly trying to navigate life in so many different ways. So yeah, I see that, and you know, that's example of what happened between us.
Yeah.
Big journeys.
Big journeys.
I would love to point this in the direction of, you know, alchemizing like the fire that refines and teaches and strips away the ego and brings you closer to love. What were your individual learnings from your experiences with each other that, you know, are just, like you're going to treasure and that are priceless?
I would say definitely like as much as I say it right now, I'm sure I'm gonna fuck this up over and over, is like trying to put something into a box that it's not. Like, that was a massive lesson, and I think like a big thing I got out of it around my queerness is like, in those from the start of Phoenix to the end, still, even when I was starting talking to other men, it was straight men, you know. And like, I was having these, they still have happened all the way up until Tim. I was like, I became like, and I'm sure a lot of people that are queer experience this, but like, I was making straight men be a bit curious, you know. They were attracted to Paisley, but I was just setting myself up for failure, you know, like that there's obviously a certain level that they're willing to go to that I've already pushed past now, you know. And that's what happened in the situation with Phoenix, that now it's just like, no, don't put myself in those compromised positions. Like, you know, God forbid something happens between Tim and I'm not going to go out and start looking for straight guys again. And like, because I happen to relate more with straight men. That's one thing. Another thing is, just being aware of these boundaries and agreements, that I can be quite, for such a fluid person, I can also be quite rigid in those spaces. And that, like, for me, as someone, I can, like, a lot of my people that I hate and have hated, I've always had that level of knowing they're a good person and they were in my life for a reason. But a lot of times before Phoenix, I've rushed back to that before processing the emotion. Like, fuck it, let's just get over it. You know, let's be friends. Let's like put my pride aside or whatever. and rush it, and it's made it worse at times, is just to go, no, just honor how long it's going to take, and just know within that, yes, I am working on returning back to a place of love and compassion and specialness, but I don't need to rush it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually one of my biggest ones as well, is just from all of our places of severance, without actively putting energy into it, but just kind of letting it rest. And it wasn't like the intention of like, I'm going to set this aside so that it will be healed one day. It's like, I'm going to set this aside because that's where I am right now. And it's just, I'm going to continue to be where I am right now. And should that eventually be back with him, then I'll honor that too. And that's just what the process of coming back together has always been. And it's really been a very meaningful thing for me, because now in other relationships, I just have this faith of like, if it comes back together, it'll come back together. But the fact that it's severed now, like, just let it go. And it takes this immense pressure off of me to be like, I need to be doing X or thinking about Y or whatever it is. Cause I just like, no, let it rest. Just let it be. It'll go where it needs to go. That's been big for me, as well as like self-trust around knowing where I stand and standing behind me in that, and then being able to communicate that clearly. That was like from the first leg of the relationship, mostly of just like, no, this is not what I want. And I need to speak that and be honest about where I am, because otherwise I swim deeper than I swim into waters I'm not ready for, I'm not conditioned for, or I'm not whatever it is. And I am drowning. So just honoring where I need to be swimming, and that's healthier for both people. And then the last one I wanted to say was less of this was just a learning from you, just my time and exposure to you, of the thing you've role modeled for me the most that I've taken on, and or at least have like I revisit and just kind of think about and I try to emulate, is around how you hold space for people to shine. And like when someone's having a moment, just the way you passively listen to them having their moment, and just like you almost take on like a motherly energy of just like pure witness, of just like they're so thrilled about what they're doing right now, and I'm just going to let them tell me about it, and I'm going to be here, I'm going to be excited about it, and that's going to be it. And like you do it with a lot of grace, and there's a lot of ways where I've found myself that doing it in ways that I felt live up to that standard of what I had received from you, and I'm always really proud of myself in those moments. So that's something that I'd like to thank you for, and something you demonstrate very well, and it's special to experience. It was for me, I'll say it that way.
Yeah, thank you. And it's such a, yeah, like that feels nice to receive. And that is something I really love, is like seeing someone, especially like that first blossoming. And, you know, that ties me back to the first date. And at the end of it, you shared that short story, and that was the first time you had read it to someone. And that rolled into a lot of other things. But then before this podcast, we all set an intention. And what came to me was navigating innocence. And that was my thing, like I wanted to give to other people. But I'm realizing that was a big thing I got from you. And that was a big thing I projected onto you and like felt from you, is because in my life, I've had like quite a roller coaster of a life, where there's a level of feeling dirty or like wrong or a bad person by the nature of the things that I've done, where there was always this like pureness and innocence around you that I was able to, like, by being in the presence of, get that transmission more and more. And I feel like, I feel a lot more innocence in my life from the relationship that we've had, and definitely a big activator of my inner child. And that's something that I've held quite tightly and like brought into myself, rather than being like, that's something I get from Phoenix, is like, oh, this is something that's mine and always has been mine, but I just saw it reflected in Phoenix because of I see everything that you do, even in your darkness, that there's this like innocent inner child that's quite pure in who you are, like quite like puppy dog energy that I've always felt like more of the like the street cat, in my life that's running the streets and the overlord of the bin.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Just roaming the streets, overlording the bin, telling people to get in it.
Yeah, get in this fucking bin.
Yeah. It feels like a nice place to wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave on, being able to, for anyone listening, if you're navigating breakups of any kind, starting to feel into like what the medicine was, what the exchange was, like what are the soul gifts that person brought into your life, that you saw things that you saw in them that were so alive and you were excited by, and how can you begin to cultivate them within yourself and recognize that you have that too. And it's a really good place to start the healing journey, and knowing that whether or not you're there yet, but starting to just feel into like, what are the qualities of that person that you really admired, and know that, yeah, you actually do have the capacity to have them too for yourself. So thank you, Phoenix Raig, for being here with us and sharing so vulnerably. Like I really admire the way that you were so in yourself, in the experience, and obviously you're a poet, so your articulation of your experiences and all of it was so beautiful to receive. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you again both for the opportunity. And it's just nice to see you both in general. And very grateful for this.
I have a request.
Tell me.
I would love for you to share some poetry with us before we wrap up this episode.
Right now?
Closing poetry. And I just also like, while you're pulling that up, I really want to say thank you for showing up. And I know this is a vulnerable place, and showing up in a space that there is a certain level that I want to acknowledge that I hold the power. This is my platform, that this is my audience, and you've come in to be vulnerable to a whole bunch of people that you don't know possibly, and that there's a level of, I've created this narrative already and then you've just popped up. I want to acknowledge that, and just all that has shifted and continues to shift, and the story is just always beautiful to me, and there's always that innocence, and I'm really excited to see what happens between us and what happens for you in this new endeavor. And just knowing like that no matter the distance physically, that like emotionally, there's always a spot in my heart for you.
Thank you. that means a lot to hear, and I'm very grateful that you have said that, and there's always a spot for you as well in my heart, very much so. Can I share two short ones?
Of course.
They're briefers.
Briefers.
Okay. This one's called When I Wasn't. In the forest skinless, wandering neither man nor woman, the trees have different names for this one. Fast tree, softwood, red sap, quick. A naturally occurring entity this, a phenomenon celebrated amongst the forest. Following a smell of curiosity, this one finds itself at the tree line. Crossing over, they are not so unique. They are given a name, They're given an identity. They're given shame to rub into their favorite parts. Sterility complete, they are ready for the city. They'll cry for the forest in their sleep, weeping willows into their pillowcase until they wake. Dreams burnt away. It was a dream. It was just a dream. It must have been just a dream. It needs to be just a dream because I'm scared to go anywhere else. Hiking through the forest, skin thick, brain foggy, trees call to them in a language they used to know. Fast tree, softwood, red sap, quick. It all sounds like human. It sounds like man and woman and should and scared. Soil tries to rustle the hair of the one it loves, but it can't reach. Following a smell of responsibility, this one finds itself at the tree line. Crossing over what feels like again, they find a poignant juxtaposition. The red sap panted, remembering what it once wasn't. And then, just to end, this one's called Ejaculation, and this one's my most recent one, and I like it a lot.
Here for it.
The warmth, the maddening tickle, a slight evolutionary sting as a thickness drips deep through your pipework, wicking and licking the sweat drops of your sanity, spreading through your skin cells as the fountain waters build in the brass. Relax, warm candle wax, fire belly, open chest, wide eyes, red, alert, awake, pink, then red, heat. The body is the cock and the cock is the body, latching, clenching, snarling, snap forward into knot and muscle, out through the face, the teeth, the nose, out through the blood, the cock, it goes, shooting, 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 flooding, gushing, warmth, warmth, brace, clench, soothing, soothing, pant, calm, 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 sigh, relax, breathe, and be this new me. Dead in an instant and reborn, soft as feathers, bat my lashes, feel my skin, and lightly tickle with the tip of my tongue the satin flower petal I place between my lips. Oh, what a Gemini ride I am.
Yes.
I feel like you should record that and like send it to Cam Fraser and Tyron and all the guy that work with men around ejaculation, is like to bring poetry into that, because that's really beautiful. And it's like to me, it felt like a drop into like a self-pleasure session, like cool, like poetry and art and presence with what's happening.
I would love to send it to them.
I love the tree one. That was so vivid for me. I loved that. That was so beautiful. I mean, I'm a slut for trees. I'm a massive tree horse.
Oh, me too.
You just came from a tree just before this podcast.
Yeah, I did. I was having the best time sitting in that tree. Fuck.
So Phoenix, where can people find you? What do you have on offer if they want to continue this experience of you, especially an audio experience? Because I know you have audio experiences that people can continue from here. Where can people connect with you and find more about what you do and who you are?
Easiest places are Instagram. I'm at Bent Light Writing, all one word. So that's Bent Light Writing. And then bentlightwriting.com has all of my, everywhere you can find me. That's a hub for everywhere. But I'm in a lot of places right now. But yeah, Instagram, I'm very responsive as well if people reached out with questions.
And because a lot of people will be listening on Spotify, you also have Spotify, right?
Yeah. The tree, I have to check, but the tree line on Spotify is my EP that I have on there. And it's a few, actually When I Wasn't is on there, but it's a few audio stories and poetry experiences that I created with a lot of ambiance, and I create every single sound with either my mouth or my voice. So it's all created in that way.
It's like a form of like storytelling, beatboxing that you do all of the soundscaping and the storytelling with the mouth. So yeah, everyone go listen to that. And also while you're on Spotify, go listen to Alpha Mama's Ex Demons. If this has brought up anything for you that you want to move through, that you've related to through Phoenix and I would love for you to go stream Ex Demons by Alpha Mama, a beautiful ritual song to let go of ex-lovers with love.
Amen.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you at the next episode. Go give this podcast a like, share, follow, comment what you needed that you received from this episode. And we'll see you at the next one.
Yeah, please subscribe, do all the things, and yeah, let us know what you needed today. I just read a really beautiful one before coming in, and Alpha shared one with me, and it does really bring energy into this. So anyone that's getting bits and pieces, please let us know what you needed today, and also reach out to Phoenix and let him know what you needed from what he shared. So
yeah, I would love that.
Amazing. Signing off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bye.